have assembled to solidify the backing. French President Emmanuel Macron, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Turkish President Erdogan, Qatar's el-Sheikh Tamim, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas are present at the event. Heads of state of Canada and Italy are also in Sharm el-Sheikh. Most conspicuously, both the Israeli Prime Minister and Hamas representatives will not be present at the event. Netanyahu was slated to attend, but his office said he will not fly to Egypt due to a Jewish holiday. Donald Trump is pitching this peace deal as a major achievement. He claims to be delivering on the peace that he has been promising since his 2024 campaign. There is no refusing the fact that the US president has bagged a point or a big point in his peace push. And like I mentioned, President Trump is already in Egypt. As you can see there, he's disembarking from Air Force One, and he's supposed to head to the Gaza summit where over 20 world leaders are waiting for him. He will chair this event alongside the Egyptian President al-Sisi, who is there, as you can see on your screens. So as we wait for the president to make his way to the Sharm el-Sheikh resort, let's talk to our correspondent Susan Teherani. Susan, this is now the second stage of his whirlwind tour of West Asia. Now we await what he's going to tell the dignitaries and all the world leaders who have gathered at the Sharm el-Sheikh.
Yeah, Eric, I think it's safe to say that we really are watching history unfold. And this is something that in the last 20 some years of myself being a journalist, I haven't seen a summit like this. We've covered numerous Middle East peace summits, agreements, but this is significant. Now, regardless of what the outcome will be, we do know that there's going to be thorny issues in the next phase. Notably, whether or not Hamas will lay down its arms, who will control a future Palestinian state, if that's even viable, who will control Gaza, what countries will be involved. But nonetheless, the will that we are seeing right now from the international community to find a peaceful solution to the Middle East is something that has not been seen in decades. Perhaps the last glimmer of hope was that meeting between at Camp David, where President Clinton tried to broker peace with Yasser Arafat, and we saw how that turned out. So yes, there is a lot of cautious optimism. There is skepticism about the obstacles ahead, but President Trump seems to have managed to gather world leaders. And when I say the world, it is from around the world. It is European states and South Asian countries. India has sent representatives. But also in the Middle East itself, most peace summits and peace talks were largely conducted by the United States, Jordan, Egypt. They are very, very important countries, of course, notably for the Palestinian side. But we haven't really seen the other Gulf countries try to invest so much and come to the table to this extent to try to move ahead as the road ahead, so to say. You know, you have Qatar, you have Saudi Arabia, you have other countries, and that's what makes it significant that they want to be part of this reconstruction effort, this rebuilding effort, and these next phases. And for a lot of them, it's going to be very important who governs Gaza. There is that concern that Israel won't have a full-fledged sort of occupation of Gaza with Israeli forces there. Israel probably doesn't want that either, but that's a point of concern. And we're seeing representatives from the Palestinian Authority also being there, as you mentioned. Israel and Hamas, the two signatories to this deal, of course, won't be present at this table.
Susan Teherani is our correspondent. She is in New York as we speak, and what you see on your screens, that is President Donald Trump inside his bist, alongside the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who will be co-hosting the Gaza summit And there are some critics who are saying that this is just for optics. What is important is what will be discussed at the summit, and if what will be discussed at the summit will be fruitful. Nader Hashemi is an associate professor of Middle East and Islamic politics at Georgetown University. He is now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Hashemi, thank you very much for making time for us, and welcome to this broadcast. The first phase
Thank you.
Seems very positive. It has been covered. It's all over now. I think what is more important now is post this phase. In your own opinion, who or what is required to take this ceasefire deal forward?
Well, fundamentally, what's required is for Hamas, which still is still in power in Gaza, to agree to Donald Trump's 20-point plan. And they have not done that. All they've agreed to was phase one, in exchange for humanitarian aid and a release of Palestinian prisoners, that they would release Israeli hostages. Mm-hmm. So what's required is more diplomacy, more political engagement, to get one of the key parties to this dispute, Hamas, to sign on to Donald Trump's peace plan. And everything that I've read and studied with respect to the dynamics of the Israel-Palestine conflict and the politics of Hamas suggests that they will not agree to disarm, because from their perspective, it would mean voluntary suicide. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying here is that I don't think this grand statement and speech that Trump has announced today, with support from many countries in the region and in the West, that we've arrived at peace in the Middle East, is going to happen. I predict that roughly a few weeks from now, when all is said and done and the first phase is over, that we're going to see the restarting of the war in Gaza. And of course, it's going to be the Palestinians in Gaza who will pay the biggest price.
Mr. Hashemi, stay with me. Susan Teherani is also with us. She's live in New York. Susan, there has been a lot of talk about what happens next, because there's some critics. I understand we've lost Susan. But Mr. Hashemi, coming back to you, there are some issues here, including the disarmament of Hamas and the withdrawal of Israel from these territories around Gaza. And we also have the governance of Gaza. These issues, how will they be handled going forward?
Well, they're supposed to, if you look at Trump's plan, the governance of Gaza is supposed to take place under the authority and the leadership of an international trusteeship headed by Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister. And he's supposed to provide the overall guidance for the future of Gaza. And there will be some Palestinian administrators who effectively will deal with local political issues such as garbage collection, sanitation, and healthcare. But all of that is predicated on the disarmament of Hamas and the insertion into Gaza of this international stabilization force comprised of Arab and Muslim countries who will go in to take over from Hamas, thus allowing for a new governance structure to emerge. That's what the plan calls for. I don't see it happening because Hamas is not willing to give up its arms. I don't see Arab and Muslim countries sending troops in to fight other Muslims in Gaza, effectively trying to do what Netanyahu was unable to accomplish, and that is to militarily defeat Hamas. So I don't see this going very far. And that's fundamentally because, despite all of this optimism that we all have about, a resolution of this conflict, the fundamental core aspect of the Israel-Palestine conflict has not been dealt with in Trump's peace plan. And that is the question of occupation. That is the question that one of the two parties into this conflict are still, not only are they denied their basic inalienable rights to statehood, but they are even denied the right to participate in a peace plan. Donald Trump's peace plan took place without any Palestinian any Palestinian input. Even the pro-American Palestinians in Ramallah, the one that the United States supports and wants to reform and hopes to bring back to Gaza, they weren't even consulted. So when you have a peace plan where one of the two parties to the conflict are not involved, have not provided any input, and it's the other side, the Israelis, who basically crafted the peace plan based on their own political and security interests, that's not a recipe for peace and stability. It's a recipe for more war.
Dr. Hashemi, let's now focus on what you're seeing on your screens right now, the optics of what is happening in Egypt. Over 20 world leaders have been invited for this Gaza summit. What do you derive from that number of world leaders being invited to this summit? And what do you think is Donald Trump's objective?
Well, Donald Trump's objective primarily is to win a Nobel Peace Prize. He missed the last announcement. He's hoping for next year. Donald Trump loves the limelight. I mean, you recall when in his first term where he loved this 2 summit meetings that he had with the notorious dictator of North Korea. Donald Trump doesn't know much about the Israel-Palestine conflict. I'm willing to bet if he had to identify the Gaza Strip on a map, he couldn't do so. So this is a lot about Donald Trump's own ego. He loves the praise. He loves the adulation. All these other countries that are there, I think, are there largely to cater to Donald Trump because he's the president of the most powerful country in the world. So let me just cite one example. So Canada has sent its prime minister there, Mark Carney. Mark Carney is there, I think, primarily because there is a major crisis in Canada-U.S. relations related to massive tariffs that Donald Trump has imposed on Canada in violation to an existing economic agreement that Canada had with the United States. And he's trying to cater to Trump, hoping that Trump will lift those tariffs so the Canadian economy won't sink further into crisis mode.
Right.
This has very little to do with the dynamics of what a just resolution of the Israel-Palestine conflict should look like. And you can just note the complete absence of any reference to international law. There is no reference to international law. This is very much about a U.S. and Israeli plan being imposed on the Palestinians and other Arab dictators and Western leaders trying to cater and cozy up to Donald Trump, giving a stamp of approval to Donald Trump's plan.
Dr. Hashemi, so what needs to happen now? And we're talking about Gaza because, okay, there's a peace deal that has been signed. It's going to be signed any moment from now. But moving on from what has happened in Gaza, 67,000 Palestinians have been killed. Over 2,000 Israelis have been killed in this war. What does Gaza need immediately? And how is Gaza going to get what it needs?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Let's be clear. Gaza today no longer exists. To quote Donald Trump, it's a demolition site. If you look at the pictures of Gaza, it looks like Hiroshima after World War II when the United States dropped an atomic bomb. It cannot sustain life. According to the United Nations, it would take 15 years just to clear the rubble from Gaza before you can build anything on top of it. And you have thousands of people who have not been accounted for, probably tens of thousands of people. Gaza is a massive war crime site. So the ability to sustain life and to build something new on top of what Israel and the United States and the West have done to Gaza is a fantasy. So what Gaza needs right now is there's a famine there. A genocide has been taking place there. It has been paused because of the ceasefire. So immediately what Gaza needs is food and humanitarian aid to prevent the famine from spreading. Mm-hmm. But fundamentally what's needed is a realistic plan to save the people of Gaza, to give them their basic rights that they're entitled to under international law. And that requires an Israeli withdrawal to its international borders and a serious plan for rebuilding and reconstructing Gaza. Even if we were to get to that ultimate state that's, a different scenario, a different peace plan, rooted in international law, rooted in an Israeli withdrawal to the 67 borders, rooted in Palestinians governing their own affairs, it would be impossible in this best case scenario to envision a future for Gaza, given the devastation that I just described. 92% of all the homes are destroyed. Most of the hospitals have been destroyed. Gaza cannot sustain life because of the devastation that has been visited upon Gaza by the Israeli army, supported by the United States and other Western countries. So that's the fundamental reality of Gaza. So all of this celebration that we're seeing today seems to ignore what I've just described. So I think that's the fundamental issue that we're facing.
Professor Hashemi, stay with me. He's an associate professor of Middle East and Islamic politics at Georgetown University. And what you're seeing on your screen is the beginning of the second whirlwind tour of President Donald Trump. He has just arrived at the resort, the much talked about resort of Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. And he's about to enter the hall alongside his co-host, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. And any moment from now, the discussions are set to begin at Sharm el-Sheikh. Professor Nader, coming back to you, Israel got their hostages, the 20 of them, living. Do you think Israel is in a better bargaining position when it comes to issues with Hamas?
Well, yes, because Israel is a million times more powerful than Hamas, politically, militarily, economically, so there's no comparison there. Most importantly, Hamas has given up its leverage over Israel because it's given up the hostages. And the big question is, what have they received in return? There are reports, unconfirmed, that Donald Trump has sent messages to Hamas that he will prevent Israel from restarting the war. If I were a Palestinian living in Gaza, I wouldn't count on that guarantee from Donald Trump. Let's recall that in January of this year, there was a ceasefire that Donald Trump negotiated and imposed on Israel. Hostages were released, humanitarian aid went into Gaza, and then after 2 months, Israel unilaterally broke that ceasefire on March the 18th, and the war started with increased devastation, and Donald Trump let it happen. Mm-hmm. So if the past is prologue, as they say, there's no reason to believe that this ceasefire and this current phase one is going to last very long. So I'm not optimistic about where this is all headed. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of room for skepticism. Mm-hmm. And I think we are, watching obviously good news that Israelis are being released. They've been, the hostages have been living in horrible conditions. Over 2,000 Palestinians have been released. They are effectively hostages, although we don't call them hostages, but they're being reunited with their family. Very good. But until and unless the fundamental core issues of this conflict that are rooted in occupation and the ongoing systematic denial by the United States and Israel, and I would also argue many countries in the West, of the basic human and national rights of the Palestinians, unless that is addressed within the framework of international law, we are going to be talking about this conflict for a very, very long time. The last point I'll make is that, the road to October the 7th and the attack that Israel suffered, the brutal attack by Hamas, and then the subsequent Israeli assault, that road to October the 7th was paved by many U.S. peace plans going back to Jimmy Carter. There's a long history of these peace plans supported by the United States, thinking that this will solve the Israel-Palestine conflict and bring peace to the Middle East. All of them have failed. And they all have failed for the reasons that I just mentioned. The absence of addressing the core issue of this conflict, the question of occupation, the question of the denial of the basic human and national rights of the Palestinian people, and the absence of any interest by the United States and the West of using an international law framework to guide diplomacy and with the goal of solving this conflict. That's I think, the problem here.
Professor Hashemi, you bring up a very important point there, and I just want to extend it and expound on it, because there has been a lot of doubt over the governance of Gaza post-war. What do you think, or how do you think Gaza will look like, or should look like, with a set of governance? Maybe you can also suggest what kind of governance system should Gaza have?
Well, first of all, Gaza should be governed by Gazans. It shouldn't be governed by Tony Blair. it's actually quite revealing that over 100 years after the British mandate in Palestine, we are back to where we started, where the British, backed by the Americans, are now presiding over a new neo-imperial and neo-colonial mandate for Palestine, where Palestinians are not given their basic national rights. And just like 100 years ago, the international community is saying that, the natives are not prepared for independence and governance now, but if they behave nicely, then maybe we will grant them an independent state somewhere down the road. But that's conditional on their good behavior. So what should happen is international law should be applied. Gazans and the Palestinians should determine their own governing structure. And fundamentally, if I had any say in this equation, I would say that one of the priorities of Gaza today is to preserve all of these devastation and sites where there have been massive war crimes and crimes against humanity taking place. One of the things that should happen is we need an influx of war crimes investigators and forensic experts to protect Gaza. Gaza now is a massive war crime site. There has to be accountability for what has happened. The ordinances, the lost life, the people who are still just disappeared and are likely under the rubble should be part of any just resolution of the war in Gaza. And the fact that it isn't just highlights, I think, how distorted Donald Trump's peace plan is and how it will reproduce the conditions that resulted in this war. It won't produce the type of peace that I think many of us would like to see.
That's right, Professor. Professor Nader Hashemi, thank you very much for talking to us today on WION World is One. What you're seeing on your screens right now is live at the Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, where President Trump has just arrived. He is addressing the press. Let's just listen in.
And now we're in a country where a friend of mine is a very powerful leader, and my friend is right here, the president. Also the general, Sometimes usually I call him the general because he's both, and he's good at both. And they've done a fantastic job. And they have very little crime, because they don't play games, that's why. They don't play games like we do in the United States with governors that have no idea what they're doing. But they don't have crime. I ask about crime and they almost don't even know what I'm talking about. So it's a great tribute to this man. He's done a fantastic job in bringing this country together, and the United States is with him all the way. Thank you. Okay, all the way, and it's an honor to be with you.
Sir, what will Egypt's role play in the peace process here?
He played a very important role, and they had a very important role with Hamas. In fact, the general was right here, was very instrumental because Hamas respects this country and they respect the leadership of Egypt. So he played a very important role. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. President Trump, in Israel just now, you were talking about a possible Iran peace deal. You said, we are ready when you are. Yeah. Is that the ultimate goal with today's signing, to get enough?
Not Iran, but I think Iran will come along. They've been battered and bruised, and they need some help. They have big sanctions, as you know, tremendous sanctions. I'd love to take the sanctions off when they're ready to talk. But they can't really survive with those sanctions. Those sanctions are very tough. But at some point they're going to say, we want the sanctions off. We're going to end up with peace. I think Iran is going to be fine. I know so many Iranian people. They're great people. They're smart, great people. Engineers, lawyers, they're academics. But they took a big hit. And frankly, if we didn't hit them with the nuclear, I don't think you would have been able to have this incredible, this deal, this once-in-a-lifetime deal. Nobody's ever seen anything like what's happening today. And countries have all come together, all different countries. Some liked each other, some didn't, most didn't. And they've all come together. Every country has come together. And by the way, Iran did put out a statement, that they support this deal very wholeheartedly. So that was in itself something. But no, I think they want to, that's all I do in my life. I make deals. And they want to make a deal.
Now that the living hostages have been returned, can you please tell us what the next steps are?
Well, they're going and looking for bodies. It's a pretty gruesome task, and they know where numerous are, as you know. I guess 5 or 6 are in yet now, but they're looking for bodies. They know the areas, and they search parties out, and they're doing it in conjunction with Israel, and they're going to be finding quite a few of them.
President Trump, can you tell us when phase 2 of the negotiations will begin?
Well, it started. I mean, it started as far as we're concerned. Phase 2 has started. And, you know, the phases are all a little bit mixed in with each other. They're going to start cleaning up. If you look at Gaza, it needs a lot of cleanup. That's why when I talked in my speech, I talked about the debris. I used the word debris. That's debris times 10. So, but they're going to really do a job. They have a lot of power. In another room, you have the wealthiest, some of the wealthiest nations in the world. All leaders, the big leaders are here, the emirs and the kings and everybody, and it's a very interesting group. I guess we have like 35 countries, and that's only because they were the 35 that we invited. Everybody that we invited came. So there's a lot of respect. And I think you'll see some tremendous progress, both in the Middle East. This country is doing very well. It has good leadership. It's about leadership. And it's really nice when you say, how is your crime situation? And they don't even know what you're talking about. What do you mean crime? We don't have crime. Because if he has crime, he puts it out very quickly. Some people think that's not nice, but I think it's great. Because people don't want to be mugged and smashed, and they don't want to be stupid people. They have a place that is doing very well. We're very proud of him because we knew each other from the beginning. The first time I met, it was in a hotel, and I was going to meet him, and then Hillary Clinton was following me. Remember Hillary Clinton? And he liked me so much, he never even got to see Hillary. He saw her for about 2 seconds. But he didn't really want to waste a lot of time. He knew what was going to happen. But that was the first time we met, and we had a very good chemistry together. And it continues till today. So I want to thank you all very much. I appreciate the way you covered this really momentous, I've never seen anything like it. The level of love, the level of respect for what it is, and it's peace in the Middle East, and everybody said it's not possible to do, and it's going to happen, and it is happening. It's before your very eyes, and that's why it's become so fascinating. Marco, do you have anything to say?
Egypt's been a phenomenal participant. I think both Steve and Jared will tell you the critical role they played, and they can tell you themselves. They hosted the talks here, and they're going to play a very important role now in the follow-up, the implementation of this, which is really, it's not simply about restoring Gaza, it is about transforming the region. So we have an incredible partner, a long alliance, a very capable partner here, and a tremendous collection of leaders. This is clearly, in my mind, I think in the mind of everyone in this room, probably one of the most important days for world peace in 50 years. And that's not an exaggeration.
Only 50?
Maybe 100. Certainly since the end of World War II, Mr. President.
Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner, I'm curious, you played such an important role in the tactical negotiations here. What will your role be going forward as a lot more has to be brought to the table here?
Oh, the minute we had inked the deal, Jared and I were already working on the implementation side of the deal. So we're dug in. We'll be here quite a bit. That's at the direction of the president. That's probably going to be one of the most important phases here. Jared is remarkable to work with. I talk about it all the time, and of course we both love working for the president. So it feels like a very honorable job.
Mr. President, would you like to say something with the interpreter?
Yes. اسمحوا لي في البداية أن أنا أرحب بفخامة الرئيس. وأنا سعيد وكل شرف موجودة في شرم الشيخ مدينة السلام. يسمح لي فخامة الرئيس أن أنا اسمي باسم كل المصريين ويمكن حتى لكل محب السلام أوجه لك التحية والتقدير والاحترام على تحقيق هذا الإنجاز الرائع والعظيم.
Well, first of all, Your Excellency, I welcome you to Egypt. It's a great pleasure and an honor to have you with us here in the city of peace, Sharm el-Sheikh. allow me also to extend, on behalf of all Egyptians and peace lovers around the world, salute, the appreciation, and the respect for this unprecedented and momentous accomplishment by your hands.
أنا كنت متأكد فخامة الرئيس أنك الوحيد القادر على تحقيق هذا الإنجاز وإنهائه.
I've been very confident that Your Excellency is the only one who's capable of bringing this about and bringing an end to this war.
وأنا في خلال اتصالي بفخامة الرئيس ذكرت له ذلك قلت له فخامة الرئيس أنت وحدك القادر على تحقيق السلام في منطقتنا.
I even said that very precisely during my communication with Your Excellency, that you are the only one who is able to bring about peace and to achieve peace in this part.
بشكرك فخامة الرئيس.
I thank you, Mr. President.
ولكن عايزين نستكمل نثبت وقف إطلاق النار ونطلق السراح كل الرهائن وحتى يعني للأسف الجثث المتبقية في أسرع وقت عشان تسلم إلى ذويهم في إسرائيل ثم إدخال المساعدات ونستكمل باقي المراحل.
And what we need to do now is to fixate the ceasefire and make sure that it maintains and sustains, that we can deliver all of the bodies of the deceased to their families. And this is very important. To bring in more humanitarian assistance into the Strip and working very closely on following up the rest of the steps that should be taken to make this successful.
Mr. President, you did very great. Thank you.
That's very nice. Thank you.
He's a good man. He's a good man. We're with him all the way.
Will he be on the board of peace, sir?
I'd like to have him on the board. I'd like to. We may need an interpreter, but that's okay.
As long as the President, His Excellency, presides the Board of Peace, I'll be there.
We've had many leaders want to be on the board, actually. The Board of Peace, it's taken on, Steve, I'd say a life of its own. Do you want to discuss that, what's happened?
I think we have a long list of applicants to be on that board.
Everybody wants to. That's very nice. That's better than the other way. Usually it's the other way. Nobody wants to be on the board. But it's really taken on. This whole thing has taken on a life that's very different. So it's been really a great honor. And you people have done a fantastic job. I want to tell you that we appreciate it very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, thank you.
One second.
أنا عايز دعم فخامة الرئيس ورعايته معانا في مؤتمر إعادة الأمن.
I just want and look forward to Your Excellency's support and your sponsorship with us in the conference for the Reconstruction.
Thank you. 100%. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you, guys. Let's go. Thanks, guys. Let's head out.
Violet Dawn. Oh my God.
All right, so that is the US President Donald Trump. He is at the Sharm el-Sheikh resort where the summit is about to begin, and he was alongside the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. He says that you will see tremendous progress in the Middle East. The president is sounding very optimistic, and he says that the progress of this initiative has been cemented by the attendance of over 35 countries who are attending this summit. He says that the second phase of negotiations has already started, and we are in the process of finalizing this peace deal. He actually lauded the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi for helping secure Gaza ceasefire. Let's talk to our correspondent Susan Teherani, who's now joining us from New York, and also Mr. Chris Blackburn, who's a security analyst. He's joining us in London. We'll talk to Mr. Blackburn in a while. Susan Teherani, the president does sound very optimistic. Probably that's a sign of what we should expect at this summit.
Yes, really a landmark deal for the president to sign. And while there is cautious optimism, of course, there's skepticism as well, because at the end of the day, Hamas hasn't agreed to all of that 20-point plan. But this is the first step in a long road and possibly a bumpy road as well. Nonetheless, the president making clear the important role that Egypt played in bringing about this deal. Trump applauded Sisi as he was sitting next to him, arriving in Egypt, saying that they don't play games like we do in the U.S. He's played a big role in the process. All countries have come together, countries who don't even like each other. And then he was asked about the role of Iran. Of course, Iran being a vital player and a funder of Hamas and some of these groups that are Israel's adversaries. He said that they could reach a deal with Iran if Iran does agree to come to the negotiating table and that Iran supports the deal. He was alluding to Iran's foreign minister Araghchi earlier, saying that while they won't be attending the summit at Sharm el-Sheikh, they welcome any kind of peace for the Palestinians. And then on a lengthy X post, he continued talking about a possible deal with the United States and how negotiations is the only way out of the impasse that they are in. But President Trump was alluding to those comments about Iran welcoming the deal. President Trump says that big leaders are here. Everybody was invited to come, has come. You will see tremendous things happen in the Middle East. It's peace in the Middle East. Everybody said that it was not possible, and it is happening. He also mentioned when asked about when this phase 2 is going to start, he said as far as he knows, negotiations are already underway. I do just want to give a caveat that while it is absolutely a remarkable day for the return of these hostages to their loved one and their families, there is also a sense of sadness, not only for those who didn't survive, but there's also anticipation for the bodies of those deceased hostages to come back. As far as we know right now, only 4 have returned, and there's concern that that might create sort of a bump in the road even during the first phase. So we'll keep you updated on those as well.
And indeed, the president did say that it's quite a gruesome experience for those who are trying to retrieve the bodies of those hostages. And he did say that Hamas has promised to deliver all the dead bodies to Israel after they're recovered. Susan, stay with me. Mr. Chris Blackburn is a security analyst. He's in London. Mr. Blackburn, thank you very much for joining us at this hour. I think what should be discussed now is what happens in Gaza, the reconstruction of Gaza. Which countries, apart from the United States, do you think should play a detrimental role in reconstruction of Gaza?
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, I think that's the million-dollar question. It's what will happen with the implementation of Trump's sort of 20-point plan. I think it'll probably be nations such as Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, people who are at the peace summit in Egypt. I think these guys will mostly play the largest roles. But there's also there's meant to be an international stabilization force, the ISF, which is mentioned in the peace plan. And then you've also got who's going to actually sit and govern. Is there going to be an international council where they proposed that former British Prime Minister Tony Blair was going to be part of it, but then Trump's mentioned that he might not be. So we've got all these different things to be negotiated in Egypt. But I think that these steps, I think, are very important. And what nations play a part, I think, as the US is massively committed to this now. And as you saw in the press conference with el-Sisi, President Trump is a force of nature, and it's all about making these connections and having his personal sort of style and branding and pulling everybody together. This has made this sort of historic summit possible. So yeah, I think there's lots to be discussed. A lot of things are up in the air, but I think this phase 2, everybody's lining up, as he said, to get involved.
Mr. Mr. Blackman, let's stay on that, the reconstruction of Gaza, because there has been a lot of talk about the money that will be involved in this reconstruction plan. And according to the United Nations, they say that it will cost around 50 or over 50 billion US dollars for the construction of Gaza, and that will take around 10 years to do that. But the real question here is, where will that money come from?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and I think the UN's right to mention it. How are we actually going to pay for this? Because as we've seen from the 2-year war, Gaza has essentially been decimated in large parts. So to rebuild the country, to give it a good administration, to pull in investors, that's what it needs. And I think that the comprehensive plan details that they need a sort of an economic miracle. Like it's been tried before after the Oslo Accords in the 1990s. However, this time I think it's a new Middle East. And I think that's what Trump's trying to say. This is a new Middle East. We want to give Gazans a good chance at life, and Israelis. So I think there will be a lot of nations lining up to pay for this as well.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Blackburn, I'll come back to you. Let's talk to our correspondent Susan Teherani. There's a lot of expectations in this Gaza summit. There's a lot of hue and cry as to what will be discussed in this summit and whether everything that will be discussed in this summit will be achievable or feasible. Is there such talk in America?
Yeah, so everyone is very sobered-eyed about what one summit can achieve. But as our guest also alluded to, the fact that you bring all of these leaders from around the world, notably the Middle East, in one room in such short notice, and they are willing and they are able, many of them, to be part of this reconstruction effort, notably for Gaza, and to be part of the security apparatus. I must include that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is also present in that meeting, so is the head of the European Union. So you really see a global coalition that's willing to extend a hand to the Middle East. And that's something that we haven't seen really in my career, like I mentioned, 20 plus years covering the Middle East. I haven't seen anything like this. Usually when you talk about a peace plan to the Israeli Gaza conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the United States is often involved. Sometimes Europe is involved, but it's usually countries like Egypt and Jordan who deal with the Palestinians, with the refugees. Then discussions and differences erupt on what happens with Hamas and so forth. It's not saying that that's not going to happen, but there is this optic right now, this willingness and momentum that everyone in the region, the Gulf countries that usually set conditions to be part of these negotiations, are all in the same room at the same time. And to sort of bank on this momentum, this is possibly the best case scenario that there is. Like I said, not to say that there isn't going to be bumps in the road, but nonetheless, I think there is a general understanding among those here in the United States as well, that if there is going to be any sort of lasting peace, then this is the opportunity and this is the moment.
Mr. Blackburn, let's talk about this momentum that Susan Teherani has just brought up, because there is the question of Gaza's plans and their objectives. There is one missing nation here, and we are talking about Iran. Do you think Gaza's plans and their objectives will be achieved minus Iran, having in mind that Iran is the second largest country in that region?
Yeah, well, I think we've just looked at the start of the conflict. I don't think Hamas would have done what they did without support from a few other nations, and one of those nations is Iran. But what we've seen during this 2-year conflict is that Israel and the United States resolved to deal with Iran, whether it be through bombing targets in Iran, massive scale. They just finished a war a couple of months ago. So Iran, yes, is a major player and could be a spoiler. But I think this could also be an opportunity for Iran to realise that, you know, the game is up in the region. The rest of the Middle East want peace, and Iran is one of the stumbling blocks on that road to peace. So I think Iran is a major important stakeholder in this process. However, And I don't think Iran can afford to help rebuild Gaza, and it'll be up to the Gulf states and the Sunni states, the Muslim nations, who will be really leading that effort.
Mr. Chris Blackburn, thank you very much for giving us time and for talking to us today. And also Susan Teherani, thank you. Well, emotional scenes of joy and relief unfolded as released hostages reunited with their families as they arrived in hospitals across Israel and as Palestinian prisoners met with their relatives in Ramallah. Well, the 20 surviving hostages returned to Israel from Hamas captivity today as part of a US-brokered Gaza ceasefire deal. President Trump met with hostage families at the Knesset in Jerusalem, where he also delivered a speech. Videos of released Israeli hostages reuniting with their families were published by the Israeli army and families, showing emotional moments filled with tears and uncontained happiness. The Israeli military said it had received all hostages confirmed to be alive after their transfer from Gaza by the Red Cross, prompting cheering, hugging and weeping among thousands waiting at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. Israeli hostages Alon Ohel and Guy Gilboa Dalal waved at crowds as they arrived at the hospital after being held captive in Gaza for more than 2 years. Released Israeli hostage Matan Zangauker reunited with his mother after 738 days in captivity. His mother has been one of the leading voices of the Hostages and Missing Families Forum.
חיים שלי, אתה חיים שלי. כפרה עליך אני, כמה החיות שלך מחכות לראות אותך, ואילנה, חיים שלי ונוני, כל העולם חיים שלי אתה.
Hostage Aviatar David, who was previously shown in a video digging his own grave, was also one of the 20 remaining living hostages freed as part of a ceasefire deal after 2 years in Hamas captivity. Joy knew no bounds for people in Ramallah as well. Buses carrying Palestinians released from Israeli prisons as part of the accord also arrived in Gaza, waving flags and cheering out loud. Hundreds gathered outside the Ramallah Palace of Culture to greet them. Thank you very much for watching WION Fine Print. Stay with us. This is WION World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call, global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at wion.com.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call, global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS Centenary Year, Kesariya at 100.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top focus tonight on Gravitas. Israeli hostages freed, Palestinian prisoners return to Gaza. These are headlines that have marked a huge turning point for West Asia. Donald Trump has called it a new dawn. Tonight we're looking at where things stand, what all unfolded over the last few hours, what lies ahead, and the big questions now hanging in the air, including whether this will bring lasting peace. Also on the show for you tonight, are the Pakistan-Afghanistan tensions headed for a dangerous escalation? We are unpacking the developments for you. Kerala in India on alert. 23 lives have been lost to the rare brain-eating amoeba. We're getting you the complete story and telling you all that you need to know. All this and more coming up.
America, His Excellency.
After more than 2 years of the war, the hostages have finally come home, Palestinian prisoners have been freed, and Gaza begins to confront the ruins left behind by 2 years of the Israeli bombardment. In President Donald Trump's words, the war is over. But is it really? The violence may have stopped in Gaza, but the true test of Donald Trump's ceasefire plan has just started. Standing alongside Trump in the Israeli parliament, Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel is committed to peace, but Israel's reckoning as far as Gaza is concerned has also only just begun.
Distinct honor to invite the President of the United States of America, His Excellency Donald J. Trump, to address the Knesset.
When Trump entered the Israeli parliament, he received a standing ovation. He has become the 4th US president ever to address the Israeli parliament. And at the podium, Donald Trump declared a historic dawn in West Asia, calling the ceasefire the end of Israel's war on Gaza and the age of terror and death.
Of the United States of America, His Excellency Donald J. Trump, to address the Knesset.
It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
In fact, he paid tributes to Netanyahu, calling him his partner, admitting, quote unquote, he is not the easiest guy to deal with. But in his words, that's what makes him great, quote unquote. In fact, the US president also thanked nations across the Arab and Muslim world that helped pressure Hamas into the deal. And before him, Netanyahu addressed the Israeli parliamentarians and hailed Israel's amazing victories, quote unquote, against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Assad regime in Syria and Iran. In fact, he called Trump the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House and reaffirmed Israel's commitment to the ceasefire that enabled the hostage release. Listen to this.
Mr. President, you are committed to this peace. I am committed to this peace. And together, Mr. President, we will achieve this peace.
And on the ground, joy and relief swept across Israel. After more than 2 years in captivity, tens of thousands gathered there to welcome home the last Israeli hostages from Gaza. Families erupted in tears, cheering, as the hostages were handed over to the Israeli military transported by the Red Cross from Gaza.
Today. It's so exciting and overwhelming that it's finally happening, that what we've been fighting for over 2 years, finally our hostages are coming home. But at the same time, we're not going to stop and we'll continue coming here until the last hostage.
Meanwhile, in the West Bank, buses carrying Palestinian prisoners arrived in Ramallah as part of the first stage of the ceasefire deal, which freed roughly 1,700 detainees from Gaza and 250 from Israeli prisons. In fact, for Gazans, the relief has been tempered by devastation. 2 years of the war left several parts in ruins, tens of thousands dead, a health system on the brink of collapse. Gazans say that the bombing may have stopped, but there is nothing to be happy about. At least 67,869 Palestinians have been killed in the 2 years of the war, with over 170,000 injured since October 7, 2023. And according to the Gaza Health Ministry, these are the numbers by the ministry. In fact, many victims remain under the rubble of damaged buildings, unreachable by rescue teams.
More than 90% of Khan Yunis is destroyed. The destruction this time is even more than the previous times. The destruction surpasses the capacities of any country, not only a municipality or a government like Gaza. It needs a lot of support and many rebuilding companies.
We call upon them once again to find a solution for the reconstruction. The war of Israel on Gaza is over now. Today we are going into another war, which is surviving. The struggle to survive is what many of us will go through here in Gaza. Everyone is trying to find a house and supply the needs of their families and children. We are also going into winter, and that's the biggest problem.
The ceasefire agreement resolves the immediate crisis, but the bigger questions remain. Who will govern Gaza? US President Donald Trump says Gaza will be demilitarized immediately, with Hamas requiring to disarm and Israeli forces pulling back as part of the 20-point plan. But will Hamas disarm? Will stable peace be possible without a Palestinian state is among the big questions being asked. The Trump plan proposes a temporary administration of Gaza, remember, by Palestinians and international experts, overseen by a board chaired by the US president. But Netanyahu has effectively ruled out any role for the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas rejects foreign guardianship, quote unquote. So the negotiations now face the hardest part, translating a ceasefire into lasting peace. And the underlying issues of the governance, the security, recognition remain unsettled. Israel's rightward political shift and the trauma of October 7 have hardened positions on both sides. While the hostages are home, prisoners have been freed. The long road to reconciliation, reconstruction, and real peace in Gaza has only just started. And US President Donald Trump is in Egypt for the Gaza Peace Summit. After that visit to Israel, several world leaders, including the UK Prime Minister, the French President, are already in Sharm el-Sheikh. In fact, before Trump's Air Force One landed at the Sharm el-Sheikh International Airport, it was escorted by Egyptian F-16s. US President Donald Trump has hailed his Egyptian counterpart as they began that summit on Gaza, saying he played a key role in the negotiations with Hamas. More than 20 leaders gathered to mark the Gaza ceasefire and the return of the Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian detainees. In fact, the Palestinian president is also attending the summit there in Egypt. These are the live images, in fact, that we're getting to you of those world leaders there. Trump's plan for ending the war in Gaza has left open the possibility of a role for Abbas's Palestinian Authority, which is a rival to Hamas. And remember, Abbas also represents Palestinians at international organizations. And among the other notable attendees there, the Turkish president, Saudi Arabia's foreign minister, among others. And we will, of course, keep a close eye on the latest coming in from West Asia, but we're shifting focus for now. Pakistan is reportedly moving into full kinetic posture along its border with Afghanistan, a dangerous escalation that perhaps signals growing desperation within Pakistan's military establishment. According to reports in Pakistani media, security sources in Islamabad have warned that any future strikes from Afghan soil will invite direct hits inside Afghanistan. And this marks a sharp departure when it comes to Pakistan's approach. Also a clear shift in its rules of engagement. Field Marshal Asim Munir now finding himself under a lot of strain as the tensions flare on multiple fronts. Last week's attacks in Kabul came just as the Taliban's foreign minister, remember, was in India, a coincidence that has not gone unnoticed in the region. The Taliban claims Pakistan was behind the attacks in Kabul and southeastern Paktika last week, killing civilians, while Pakistan has called on Kabul to stop harboring TTP terrorists on its soil, quote unquote. Over the weekend, fierce clashes followed near the Durand line around midnight, where the Taliban claims to have captured 20 Pakistani posts and killed 58 soldiers. Islamabad disputes those numbers, saying 23 of its troops died and that 200 Taliban fighters were neutralized. The violence has paused only after mediation from Qatar and Saudi Arabia, but Kabul has warned that any violation of its territory will provoke retaliation. The United States and Iran, in fact, have both urged restraint, cautioning that a spiral of strikes and counter-strikes could destabilize the entire region. At home, Asim Munir's troubles only mounting. Political instability in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa adding yet another layer of difficulties for the military chief. Suhail Afridi, a nominee backed by Imran Khan's PTI, has been announced as the new chief minister, a move that the opposition rejected as unconstitutional after boycotting the elections. The governor there had even questioned the authenticity of former Chief Minister Ali Amin Gandapur's resignation letters, but Imran Khan's camp pressed ahead claiming on X that the transition was made under Khan's direct orders to manage the worsening situation in northwestern province there. Remember, the Pakistan establishment has tried to remove the PTI government from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the only province in Pakistan where the PTI government is in power, on multiple occasions, but to no avail. Just to put this simply, Asim Munir has failed to defeat Imran Khan, even though he is behind bars. And Imran Khan's decision to remove Gandapur stems from him being viewed as too accommodating towards the Pakistan military. And the appointment of Sohail Afridi, a young lawmaker from the tribal district of Khyber, as his replacement is hence both symbolic and also strategic. Pakistan today is standing at a crucial crossroads where its military ruler, Field Marshal Asim Munir, appears to have chosen the oldest and deadliest game in the country's playbook, the politics of division. And having run out of foreign enemies to exploit, and with his legitimacy increasingly fragile at home, Munir seems to have turned inward, weaponizing ethnicity and regional identity to try and sustain control. Pakistan streets also simmering with tension. A massive pro-Palestine march organized by the Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan turned violent in Muridke, around 35 kilometers from Lahore. Clashes between the demonstrators and the police left at least 5 people dead, including a police officer. Dozens of others were injured. Videos from the site where the clashes took place showing vehicles burning, chaos spreading as the protesters tried to remove the barricades on the highway from Lahore to Islamabad. In fact, TLP's leader Saad Rizvi was reportedly among the injured, and his whereabouts remain unclear. Gunfire echoed as he appealed to the security forces to stop firing. Police saying that they have arrested over 100 demonstrators and are still hunting for the protest leaders hiding in nearby neighborhoods. You see, for Pakistan's army chief, this combination of these border battles, the political turmoil, the street unrest, representing multiple challenges. Asim Munir's and Pakistan Army's another traditional playbook of blaming India for national unity no longer resonates, because India has simply grown too powerful to be used as a convenient distraction. In short, Pakistan's establishment is facing pressure from just about every direction, and this time there is no easy escape route. Switching gears for now, as West Asia breathes a sigh of relief because of the Gaza ceasefire, the Ukrainian president has hailed the truce and said that it brings hope that US President Donald Trump could similarly broker an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. He said on social media, I'm quoting here, "When peace is achieved for one part of the world, it brings more hope for peace in other regions." It's been a long-drawn war. Tens of thousands have been killed, millions forced from their homes, much of eastern and southern Ukraine decimated. Still, the war is showing no signs of abating. If anything, its spillover effect is being felt and being talked about. According to new reports now, Russia has reportedly started what analysts are calling Phase 0 in its military preparations for a potential war with NATO. You heard that right. The Institute for the Study of War, in fact, saying the appearance of a small group of Russian military personnel along the Estonian border is part of a broader effort to establish an information and psychological platform ahead of possible future conflict. This is crucial. And on Friday, October 10, Estonian authorities temporarily closed a section of the road near the Russian border after the border guards spotted Russian servicemen without identification markings. The road, which runs partially through the Russian territory, spans nearly a kilometer between the village of Varska and Satse. Estonian officials noted that the uniforms of the individuals spotted suggested that they were not Russian border guards. Moscow, however, maintaining that its activities in the area were routine operations. The Estonian foreign minister, meanwhile, said that Russian troops have been acting more decisively and visibly than before. Though he cautioned against exaggerated reports of escalating tensions there. The government has also announced plans to discontinue the use of this road with alternative routes already in place or under construction. The report saying that this incident follows earlier provocations, including the Russian military aircraft violating Estonian airspace on September 7 and 19. And according to Western experts, Russia has intensified both covert and overt actions against Europe, marking what they describe as Phase 0, basically a stage focused on shaping information and psychological conditions as a precursor to potential open war with NATO. The report notes this is the first time ISW has observed what the Kremlin calls little green men, that is, Russian forces in unmarked uniforms operating near a NATO state under this Phase 0 campaign. Meanwhile, the conflict in Ukraine continues unabated. Firefighters in southern Ukraine worked through the night to contain massive fires at textile and sewing warehouses in Odessa after a Russian drone attack which damaged more than 5,000 square meters of storage space and destroyed a vehicle. One person was injured. On the front lines, Russia and Ukraine have been exchanging fire across multiple regions. The Russian Defense Ministry claiming to have shot down more than 70 Ukrainian drones over the past 24 hours, while striking Ukrainian fuel and energy infrastructure in 137 locations. Ukraine, meanwhile, says it has regained control of a village in Zaporizhia Oblast. This, as reports suggest, that the U.S. intelligence sharing has enabled Ukraine to conduct long-range strikes against Russian energy facilities, though neither Washington nor Kiev have officially commented on the report. Meanwhile, in Donetsk, the situation is dire. Ukrainian soldiers are increasingly exposed to drone attacks that can hit targets with precision. Local hospitals reported shrapnel injuries as the primary cause of the wounds, with evacuation of the injured becoming more difficult due to the intensity of the fighting. Soldiers and medical staff have also described a grueling reality. Some wounded remain on the front lines for days or even weeks, and the advanced technology of the drones is changing the dynamics of combat entirely. In Kramatorsk, authorities have ordered evacuations of families with children from certain neighborhoods as the city faces heavy shelling. And amid this escalated fighting, US President Donald Trump has said over the weekend that he may provide Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles if the Russian president does not end the war. And discussions between Trump and the Ukrainian president reportedly cover the potential delivery of such weaponry, though the Kremlin has reiterated that any use would require US participation, and that would mean direct conflict between the US and Russia. Today, Ukraine's foreign minister said more countries are expected to join a NATO-backed arms funding scheme known as the Prioritized Ukraine Requirements List. Already, countries including the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Germany, Canada have financed earlier packages. In fact, it is designed to provide Ukraine with new weapons and reallocate US stockpiles through contributions from NATO allies. As a whole, the situation in Eastern Europe remains tense, to say the least, with Russia advancing the phase zero tactics that we just told you about, Ukraine continuing to defend its territory under challenging conditions, and the NATO-backed support growing amid the escalating hostilities. How far will this escalation go remains to be seen. And after more than 3 years of the fighting, can diplomatic or military solutions still happen? And here's a quick look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. With the US rushing to secure rare earths, we tell you more about the moves being made and why this is so crucial for the United States. What's the story behind the red grapes being grown by Spanish scientists? We tell you all that you need to know. All this and more coming up. The Pentagon has launched a major drive to secure key minerals that power America's defense industry in what appears to be a direct response to China's tightening control over the global rare earth supplies. In fact, the US plans to spend as much as $1 billion to stockpile the critical resources like cobalt. These minerals, these materials are essential for manufacturing advanced fighter jets, radar systems, naval ships and submarines, among other uses. And this stockpiling effort comes soon after Beijing imposed export restrictions on rare earth elements, considered vital to US military hardware and weapons production. So the move signals China's growing leverage over materials that power the modern battlefield. And according to the US Geological Survey, China produces almost 70% of the world's rare earths. Beijing controls over 90% of the refining and processing of rare earths. For the Pentagon, the stakes are as high as they could be. More than 80% of American weapon systems rely on rare earth minerals. From precision-guided missiles and stealth fighter jets to nuclear submarines and next-generation radar networks, elements like samarium, terbium, forming the core foundation of the US defense industry. And without them, America's military readiness could face serious disruption. Analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies warning that these rare earths are, quote-unquote, the operational backbone of the US defense systems, including the F-35 Lightning II fighter jets, Virginia and Columbia class submarines, Tomahawk missiles, high-frequency radar and Predator drones. And China is aware of this strategic dependency, and it has used its mineral dominance as a bargaining chip in the trade negotiations with Washington. Experts say there are virtually no substitutes for most rare earth materials, and China tightly guards the refining technologies that America needs to build its own capacity. So the Pentagon's billion-dollar scramble may not be enough to break that dependence anytime soon as such. But then it also signals that America is trying to reduce its dependency and letting the future of its defense no longer solely hinge on China's goodwill. Our next story is from India, where Union Minister Suresh Gopi has been making headlines for something that he has said. The actor turned politician wants to return to acting. You heard that right. It's an extraordinary story. Let's just tell you a bit more about what he has said. Suresh Gopi was addressing an event where he spoke about how he wishes to continue his film career. What's the reason? He reportedly says his income has significantly decreased since taking up the ministerial role and that he needs to earn more. In fact, he said he never prayed for becoming a minister and spoke about how he ended up becoming one. And he reportedly went to the extent of suggesting who should be replacing him as union minister. When have you heard a minister saying all this? No wonder his statements have created a lot of buzz. Let's just tell you more about him and his journey in case you are not aware. He is well known for his work in Malayalam cinema, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Hindi films. He was born in Kerala and he is also known for his singing skills. In fact, in 1998, he received both the National Film Award and the Kerala State Film Award for Best Actor. What about his stint as a politician? He is the BJP's first Lok Sabha member from Kerala. Earlier, he contested from the Thrissur constituency on a BJP ticket but was defeated. And then years later, in March 2024, he was once again named as the candidate for Thrissur and went on to win. He was earlier Rajya Sabha MP from 2016 to 2022. He currently serves as Minister of State for Tourism and Minister of State for Petroleum and Natural Gas. But then, how long would he continue in that post? And what happens from here onwards remains to be seen. In modern warfare, tensions are not just about ships and sovereignty, they're also about perception. It's a lot about optics. And here's why we are saying this. New footage purportedly from the South China Sea shows Philippine fishing boats idling near China's Yuangyang Dao, also known as the Scarborough Shoal, and Xian Bin Jiao. At first glance, these boats look like any other fishing operations. But watch closely and it tells you a rather different story. Fishing rods hang idly on decks, clothes flutter in the wind, but there is no sign of the deep sea activity that normally characterizes this area. According to the report, these are not fishermen and that's not a fishing boat. The report says they are not even locals. They are allegedly brought from other parts of the Philippines and guided by the government vessels, and their daytime only activities contrast with the typical night fishing operations that actually attract fish. And guided by government vessels, their daytime only activities contrast with the typical night fishing operations. This also seems to be a lot about sending out a message, perhaps. A staged or performative operation? That's the question also doing the rounds. But here's a key detail here. Find the source of the video and it will tell you the full story. The video comes from a media outlet affiliated with the China Media Group. In other words, this is Beijing trying to frame the story, portraying Philippine activity as provocative, staged, and potentially threatening in what China claims as its territorial waters. But this is not happening in isolation. Just days ago, the Philippine government raised concerns about a Chinese Coast Guard maneuver near Thitu Island. All right, going back across now to these visuals coming in from Egypt. It's a photo opportunity of those world leaders who've gathered there for that crucial summit. This, of course, coming in just hours after West Asia witnessed a massive turning point because of the ceasefire deal. All right, let's play out those visuals for you once again. Those world leaders gathering for that photo opportunity. Quite a moment. Of course, it has been a rather historic day for West Asia. A number of questions still hanging in the air as far as that Gaza ceasefire plan is concerned about what happens from here onwards. But at the same time, US President Donald Trump there taking center stage earlier in the day, calling it a new dawn for West Asia. Shifting focus now to India, where Kerala is grappling with a sudden surge in cases of a deadly brain-eating amoeba, sending alarm bells ringing through the state. In the past few weeks itself, health authorities have recorded at least 104 cases of amoebic encephalitis, commonly known as brain fever. 23 fatalities have been confirmed so far. The outbreak coming shortly after Kerala faced a major health scare from the Nipah virus last year. Kollam and Thiruvananthapuram are among the districts with the highest cases, while cases are also climbing in other parts. In the latest, a 62-year-old man has fallen victim to the disease, while the youngest casualty of this infection was just 3 months old. The disease is caused by a free-living amoeba that enters the body through contaminated water, basically via the nose, and then reaches the brain. Globally, infections from the brain-eating amoebas carry a fatality rate of 98%. 98%, while related cases exceed 70% mortality. Symptoms appear suddenly and rather aggressively, like high fever, excruciating headache, nausea, vomiting, tremors. Patients may develop meningitis-like signs, including stiff neck, light sensitivity, confusion, also can rapidly slip into a coma. Even with treatment, survival is rare, with only 11 known survivors worldwide. Early detection remains critical to fight the outbreak. Kerala has launched the Water is Life campaign, disinfecting wells and public water sources. The state health minister reporting that prompt diagnosis combined with the treatment using a type of oral medication has improved survival rates to 24%, far above the global average of under 3%. Kerala's health authorities have meanwhile urged the people to remain vigilant, avoid unsafe water exposure, and seek immediate medical attention at the first signs of the illness. The ancient city of Timbuktu is alive with celebration. A city once known for its golden age of learning is now honoring a monumental symbol of its heritage. Hundreds have gathered to preserve and celebrate a mosque that has stood for 7 centuries. Our next report telling you more.
The sun rises over Timbuktu, casting its spell on one of Africa's most iconic landmarks. Built in 1325 by Emperor Mansa Musa, the Djingarey Ber Mosque remains a masterpiece of earthen architecture. Formed entirely from banko, a mixture of raw earth that has survived the test of time. Every year, residents and masons unite to protect the structure from the harsh desert climate. But this time, it is more than maintenance. It is about honoring a milestone.
Every year, we carry out maintenance work on the mosque, and all the communities and masons come out to do the annual plastering. But this year is exceptional as it coincides with the 700th anniversary of the mosque. We are therefore coming together to perform the same ritual and do the work to ensure its durability.
The mosque, recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site in 1989, faced grave threats in 2012 when armed Islamist groups occupied the city and destroyed several cultural sites, including mausoleums and parts of the mosque. Now, the people of Timbuktu are reclaiming their heritage with pride.
We are in 2025, and today marking the 700th anniversary of the mosque. So to celebrate this anniversary, we have combined the annual plastering and the celebration of the 700th anniversary of the mosque.
The anniversary has united the city across generations, from elders to the youth. Everyone takes part in restoring history with their own hands.
It's a cultural celebration, but it's also a celebration of social cohesion. Everyone participates, women, young people, and the elderly. Everyone is involved because it's also an initiation, a way of showing future generations that this activity needs to be taken seriously.
In a city once scarred by conflict, the plastering of Jingere Bear has become more than a tradition. It is an act of resilience, faith, and unity. 700 years on, the mosque in Timbuktu continues to stand tall.
3 economists have jointly won the 2025 Nobel Prize in Economics. American-Israeli Moquer, Francis Philippe Aghion, and Canada's Peter Howitt have been bestowed this honor for their work on technology's impact on sustained economic growth. 79-year-old Moquer won one half of the prize for identifying the prerequisites for sustained growth through technological progress, while Aghion and Howitt shared the other half for their theory of sustained growth through creative destruction. Their work answered questions about how technological innovation drives growth and how sustained growth can be maintained. Moquer, who is a professor at Northwestern University in the United States, used historical sources as one means to uncover the causes of sustained growth becoming the new normal. Aghion and Howitt then examined the concept of creative destruction, which basically refers to the process when a new and better product enters the market, the companies selling the older products lose out. After winning the Nobel for Economics, Aghion called on Europe to learn from the US and China, who he believes have found ways to reconcile competition and industrial policy, saying, and I'm quoting, "In Europe, in the name of competition policy, we became very anti any form of industrial policy. I think we need to evolve on that and find ways to reconcile industrial policy in areas like defense, climate, AI, biotech, where we are very good." Formerly known as the prize, the Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Study, Sciences. It's the final prize to be given out this year, and it's worth 11 million Swedish crowns or $1.2 million. The laureates will receive their prizes at formal ceremonies in Stockholm and Oslo on December 10. That date is the anniversary of the deaths of Alfred Nobel in 1896. In Spain, a familiar fruit is getting a new twist. A new table grape looks ordinary on the outside but surprises with a deep red flesh on the inside, just like a cherry. Scientists are saying it could offer a fresh take on one of the world's most familiar fruits, and it's all the result of a decade of selective breeding. At first glance, they look like any other dark table grapes. But what's under the peel is what makes them unique. A deep red pulp that looks more like a berry or cherry perhaps, rather than a conventional grape. The variety was developed at a lab in a project that began over 10 years ago. Why the need to create this new variety altogether? In one word, antioxidants. Listen to this.
Our hypothesis was that if we can get red flesh table grapes, they would be more rich in antioxidants because the color of the skin is given by the antioxidants called anthocyanins. And those red flesh teinturier varieties have these antioxidant compounds, these anthocyanins, also in the flesh. So we thought that if we cross those ancient varieties